Hey there folks, welcome to the July 2022 Gameplay Sandbox update. It's been a while since our last update, that being the demo from February, and in that time we've been hard at work on Division 2. As we explained in the last update, we wanted to steer away from content-heavy updates as that would involve showing a lot of Division 3 stuff, and we want the focus to remain on Division 2. However, we've made some big changes to the weapon sandbox in Division 2, and we decided now was a good time to get into some of them, especially as some stems directly from demo feedback. There'll be a few other things to nibble on too, so stick around. Kicking things off, Division 2 is introducing a lot of new changes to the weapon sandbox, bringing new functionalities for classics of the arsenal, some not introduced into a cut content mod before. Let's break down some of these changes, starting with the AKM. In RTBR, the AKM is a reliable weapon with heavy damage output, but to balance it with other weapons available at this time, we introduced a delayed fire system where, after the first 5 shots held down, the weapon slows in fire rate by about 20%. It's powerful enough to mow down weak enemies even when the trigger's held, but with careful burst firing, the player's DPS will be higher. Next, I'll hand off to Iridium, who programmed the pistols function.
In an early release build of Half-Life 2, a bug existed where you could hold right-click to charge up a second shot from the pistol. We decided to canonize this feature with a secondary burst fire for the pistol, firing 2 shots in quick succession. The primary fire is now also much more accurate, however, it can no longer be spam-fired. Since the demo, the primary fire rate has been increased to 250 rounds per minute, up from about 225 rounds per minute, and the burst fire allows for 4 bursts per second. Now, Amicus will describe the shotgun you'll find in Ravenholm.
Half-Life 2's double-barrel burst was satisfying, but challenged the balance of a lot of other weapons at close range, whilst also being unnecessary overkill in panic-firing situations. For RTBR, we decided to innovate with a semi-auto secondary fire which has a considerably faster fire rate, but also less accuracy. The primary fire's accuracy was slightly buffed to compensate, giving players a little more control over their ammo economy. Arbab is up next, with the grenade cooking system.
The grenade as a weapon has a bit of inconsistency associated with how much you can get out of it, and whilst useful against less intelligent enemies like zombies, loses some of its usefulness against the Combine. As a result, we've implemented a grenade cooking system, which lets players time their grenade throw to deal some serious damage and wipe out many soldiers at once. However, overcooking it will be hazardous to the player. As you've been watching these, by the way, you might have noticed that the flashlight has changed. It now has a new texture with a wider field of view and an infinite battery life, which helps with player visibility as well as making the flashlight more useful in general. Now, back to Kralik regarding the MP7 and Stunstick.
Division 1's MP7 was a force of nature. Our AKM initially struggled to keep up, and so in the Division 2 demo it received a nerf in damage that was a bit overtuned. Now, it's been buffed from 25 rounds in the mag to 30, and received a small buff in damage potential, but still gives the AKM room to shine. But the MP7 now also has its own personality at short range, as intended. In Division 1, the Stunstick's damage was higher than the crowbar, but slower in attack speed, ostensibly for breaking crates and other environmental hazards in one hit. However, this was a niche use that didn't play well into the strength of the weapon, and we decided to add a charge-up system. At full charge, the Stunstick will one-hit kill a zombie, giving players a powerful option for saving ammo in difficult situations. Now that we've gone over the weapon functionality, let's get into another addition to our weapon system, draw and reload frames. Our weapon animations are detailed and aimed at triggering all the right reactions in our collective lizard brains, but we also noticed a few instances where they were just a little too long in practical gameplay. Rather than compromise the quality of our animations for those who like to chew the scenery, we've introduced a system used in CSGO and a lot of other modern shooters where the weapon's readiness is determined on a per frame basis instead of when the animation concludes. This works in 2 ways, and I'll hand off to CW3D first.
When drawing a weapon, the weapon's actual ability to fire is arbitrarily linked to when the draw animation concludes. This limits the ability of players to quick switch in the relevant weapon for a task. So draw frames now determine a weapon is ready to fire as soon as the animation shows it pointing forwards. This speeds up ready time across some weapons by only a fraction of a second, but adds to the flow of gameplay a lot. Entities next up.
Like draw frames, our weapon reloads have flare, but swapping out just a little too early could sometimes result in players just missing the reload readiness at the end of the animation. Now, a frame is marked as when the weapon is reloaded and ready to go, usually synced up to the magazine being inserted. Players can then quick swap to skip the rest of the reload, which, combined with draw frames, keeps combat flowing nicely.
So, you've gotten a good look at our weapons now, but what about enemies? Well, one has received considerable rework since the demo, and has added functionality for mappers to boot. The Cremator is an iconic enemy of the cut content, and we brought it back in Division 1 and 2 with some changes to its AI, like an added melee attack, that were aimed at making it more satisfying to fight. However, we didn't totally hit the mark, and following on from feedback in the demo, we made a few notable changes to its abilities. I'll hand off to Iridium to discuss the Cremator, as most of it has been his brainchild.
The Cremator has received changes that are aimed to reduce the surprise and guesswork that came with predicting its attacks. This led to much frustration during the Division 2 demo encounter. We did this in a few ways. First, wind up and wind down animations from the beta we utilized, which help to telegraph that the Cremator is preparing to fire, and then it is de-escalating as a threat once it winds down. Secondly, the melee attack speed was sped up, diminishing the player ability to trick the AI of the Cremator, getting it stuck in a melee loop. Thirdly, coded by Arboff and designed graphically by Random Cat Dude, we took the new Cremator fire and updated it to burn the player in a way that showed an afterburn overlay similar to TF2. This overlay is much less intrusive than the red screen and large green flames of before, giving players less disorientation when fighting the Cremator. As a bonus, I added the ability for the player or other entities to be ignited and extinguished with a Cremator fire entity specifically, which allows the creation of environment puzzles similar to those shown in the video.
As you can see, we've done a lot of work ensuring Division 2's Sandbox is up to snuff, with more interesting weapon functions to explore and a fairer Cremator to face. Now, let's get into a few extra tidbits, assets and levels. I'll hand off once more to Amicus to talk about this first one.
The Sawblade Cannon was originally a trap we envisioned for Ravenholm, involving players being able to launch saw blades from a controlled gigantic crossbow. But whilst cool in theory, in practice we found it was almost always better to just fling them with the gravity gun. We still wanted to explain what use Grigori has for saw blades. He's not flinging them like frisbees. And so we modeled this broken down Sawblade Cannon model. You'll be able to spot a few throughout Ravenholm, with saw blades nearby for your own use. Next up is a prop from Maxwell's lab, and Val's up this time.
Maxwell's lab has been intended to have its own personality from both retail and the other labs in the mod. And this has been done with dozens of custom props, decals and textures, and each below this personality. I'm modeling the Black Mesa East prop with a distinctive new look, one of the last tasks in this lab. It lays things off in a great way. Next, Entity will say a few words about Consul 1's lighting improvements.
A common complaint about Outer Consul 1 in the wake of the demo was how dark the map was, and whilst this was intended to a certain extent, we also agree in some places it was just too dark to see where you're meant to be going. As a result, we've gone back and brightened up the ambient lighting and direct lighting on the light environment considerably, as well as adding floodlights to the platforming area so players can better see where they're meant to be jumping. Back to CW now, discussing Quarrytown 02 as he's voicing some of the denizens of the place.
Quarrytown 02, as the middle leg of Gordon's trials in Ravenholm, introduces more zombies you're used to facing, as well as a few new to Ravenholm. Rife with secrets to uncover, it's a place where dedicated players will have plenty to dig up. Finally, back to Kralik.
The penultimate map of Ravenholm is currently the closest to its retail counterpart in design, but once more Flash's art passing is making a familiar basis unrecognizably beautiful, and setting a remarkable standard for the rest of the division. And that's all for our mid-2022 update. We know it's been a while, but rest assured, as this update demonstrates, we've been real busy. Before leaving off, if you'd like a piece of the action, consider joining with one of the roles below. First, competent level designers. We're still open to having both additional support in the art pass and blockout departments. And 2, a facial flex / sculptor. We're still in need of someone comfortable with sculpting head meshes in the context of Source, so creation of VTAs as well. If any of these roles look good to you, please add me on Discord at Kralik/David #0901. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time, hopefully for some big news about Division 2.